All right. So this is our Zoom session on executive standards, all 8 of them. And we're going to start with strategic leadership, the very first one. And when I was reading about it in that article, it was talking about sharing a vision for change. Noticing when something needs to change for the better, and then always considering new ways. And I think that's always a challenge for maybe especially like new principals to a school, to come to a school and then say, well, something that we've done all this time isn't working, so let's change it. Sometimes you're met with some opposition, but to be that driving force behind initiatives is important for a principal.
Right.
When I was reading that.
And I think we're kind of doing a lot of this work, talking about developing our own competencies within our PLC work. We're really driving that change. What are we going to do differently so that we can help meet the needs of our PLC goals? And so I think we are developing our strategic leadership currently.
Right. And then it also indicates collaboration, which that's the whole theme of our program, is collaboration, so that you can better the overall. And so I think, going in as new administrators, that you have to be intentional about bringing others into that change process.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at these competencies, there's a lot of these competencies that can align to several of these standards. But the one that I guess really just stuck out to me was creative thinking. And because when you're having that vision for a change, sometimes you do have to do some creative things that people have never done before to get the change that you're wanting, to get the growth that you're wanting for your students or your school. And to look at your school improvement plan also, and to be that driving force behind that, to make sure that you're accomplishing those goals and having that successful execution of that.
Yeah, well, and like right now my school's going through the advanced ed process. I don't know if anyone else's school is doing that right now, but we are, in our 5-year cycle, and looking at all the data that we have, survey data from parents, from students, from teachers, all of that, and seeing, like, we have to see what are our strengths and where are our weaknesses, and develop our goals based on that. And so we actually have a school-wide early release, or a county-wide early release day on Monday, and we're going to be focusing on that. And I feel like that fits right in with this strategic leadership piece as well.
And I want to add that I think communication is very important. I currently have a new principal, and one of the things that she did right off the bat is to bring us into the dialogue process. She asks lots of questions. In our SIT meeting, she's doing lots of writing. She's writing down, she's soaking in, she's getting input. Things that she has questions on, she emails the staff, she asks for input, she uses her technology, sometimes does Google surveys. So just trying to get feedback from the people so that she can manage the change. We're also going through the magnet process, and it's been interesting to watch that as well, because that's a huge change for us. And so that change management has been critical, the communication, and then that dialogue inquiry with the staff.
Yeah. Well, and then I think there's a bullet point under standard 1 that says creates processes to distribute leadership. And we've been talking about distributive leadership, or reading about, rather, distributive leadership and a lot of the things that we've been reading recently, I feel like. And so I feel like that also pulls in those ideas of, hey, we're a team, because one person can't do this job. And I actually had a conversation with my own principal one day, a couple of weeks ago, and she was like, I couldn't do it all. You just kind of have to know who the people are in your building that are willing to help you, who are the people who are, like, what their strengths are, so that you can, play off of those strengths, because everybody has a strong point, and it's not always the same for everyone. So just making sure you're pulling those people in. So.
One of the things I want to indicate is that it talks about ensuring state policy. My principal is a very detail-oriented administrator, and she knows policies, and there was a lot of things that we were not doing in our school. She brought it to our attention, and I would say some were not willing to change at first. I mean, these were things that were in state policy. I mean, something as simple as not selling candy. We did not know that. Our clubs were selling candy during the school day, according to state policy.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to sell candy during the school day. And we did that, for years. And that was something that she knew that according to state policy you weren't supposed to do. So administrator really does need to know what those state policies are.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we'll go into the next one, instructional leadership, the second standard. And then I guess this would be the one that right off the bat we would have the most experience in, because it's coming from our classroom, focusing on that learning and the teaching skills that are going on in your building, and empowering your teachers. I love an administrator who can empower us and through that distributive leadership and looking for our strengths and say, hey, I know you're good at this and I need your help, just like you were saying, Felicia.
Right.
And then my principal, she is constantly in classrooms. She's walking through the building. She'll come into our classroom several times a week to see what we're doing. And when she comes in there, it's not like an intimidating observation, but she's flowing through the classroom and she's talking to students and, getting down their level and asking them, hey, what are you learning about today? What are you doing? Show me what to do. And, I think as a principal, that is just so helpful to be in these classrooms and to see the type of teaching that's going on and to see the learning that's happening. And then, it also kind of, keeps you as a teacher on your toes as well, because you know that your principal is going to be in there. You don't want to have any downtime. You want to make sure that you're using every time, every bit of the day that you have. It just helps you stay more accountable because somebody's going to be coming in there. Of course you want to anyway, but I think it just helps with several, maybe other teachers in our building, since she's been coming in a lot more frequently. Everybody seems to be a little bit more prepared. There's more student learning going on.
Right. Which is our, as teachers, that's our ultimate goal, is for our students to learn. So it's really a benefit. And some people view it because my principal does the same thing at my school. She comes in and she'll talk to the kids and things like that. And some people view it as almost as I'm trying to catch you doing something you're not supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I don't view it that way at all. And I guess it's because I just feel like she just needs to know what's going on. That's just part of being a good leader. Yes. And so there's a bullet point under here of some of the practices, and it says that they ensure that there is appropriate and logical alignment between the curriculum of the school and the state's accountability program. So we don't know everything we know a lot about it, but she is the one who ultimately is responsible for making sure that we are following all those laws and policies, as Cynthia mentioned. And so if she's never in the classroom, she's not going to see the curriculum. She's going to maybe see lesson plans or, have an informal conversation, but until you see it in action, you really don't know that it's being accomplished. Right. And so I think that's super important. And I don't know, Cynthia, how does that work on the high school level? Because you guys have a lot more teachers probably than my school does. And just them coming in and chatting with your students and things like that. Is that something that happens at your school?
Our administrators don't get to do as much walking around probably as a middle school or a elementary, simply because you have more discipline issues. At the high school level, you have a lot more discipline issues from skipping class to sneaking off campus to fighting, smoking weed. So the dynamic is very, very different. So they do empower the teacher to make sure that we get a good grasp on discipline. And they do set the standards very high for professionalism and trust us to really lead the classroom without their presence. So they're not in our classes as much simply because their hands are pulled in so many other directions. But one thing that my principal has done, she set very, very high standards. And that first sentence, that no nonsense, accountable environment, she has done that very, very effectively. She expects us to be accountable. Things that she shares, we need to document, we need to stay in the loop. And so she sets a very, very high standard. And that's one thing that I admire by her from the beginning. She has communicated that what she expects out of us. So she used some of the technology tools and putting things out on our online platform to let us know what she wants. And she communicates those standards of professionalism constantly. So a high school principal really can't micromanage. They really do have to have a staff that they can trust and expect to do what they need to do. Real different dynamic.
Yeah.
It really is.
Just a question, Cynthia. I'm just curious. How many principals do you have at your school? Like, you have one principal, but then assistant principals, or?
We have 4 administrators.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of them is our principal, and we have 3 assistants.
Okay.
And we have 1,200 students, which is a smaller school, because we have some schools that have like 2,000.
Right.
So,
well, I graduated in a class of there were 183 of us, so I'm all about some small schools.
yeah, different dynamic.
Yeah.
But as one of the things that my principal does, that she relies heavily on other experts. I mean, she's brought people in and did walk-arounds with them and get their feedback and things like that. So she really does. I think it's a piece that talks about the community and collaboration even with the community, and she does do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. So we'll move on to the next other cultural leadership. And to me, when I read this, I thought of morale, teacher morale. Collaborative working environment, and your culture of your school. Because it's funny how when you can go into one school you feel one way, and then maybe in the same county you go into a different school and it has a completely different feeling. There's one school in my county right now that teachers are just fleeing from if they can. And and parents are not happy. I mean, it's just a discouraging feeling when you walk into there, and it's an administrative problem. I think as an administrator, you really have to empower your teachers, and you have to have that, like they said, that can-do attitude. And your values and your beliefs need to be implemented as well and shine through you, so your teachers can believe that they're in a good place to work, and that we have the best students and we're going to do the best job, and because that really builds onto that culture of your school. And I don't know, when I'm thinking about this particular school, and I've had teacher friends that work there, it just breaks my heart to think about what's going on at that school, and it's affecting the students as well. Because there's no way to get around that. If you're going to a job where you don't feel empowered, or you don't feel like you have that professionalism, kind of like you were talking about, Cynthia, how your principal, trusts you to make your own decisions and trust you to be that leader in your classroom. When you have a micromanager, I think that kind of gets in the way of student learning in the end. So I think it's very important to make a culture of your school that is going to be empowering for your teachers, is going to be a happy environment for those students, and a place where parents feel good about sending their kids, and a place where parents are happy to be involved. They want to know what's going on, and they want to be in on that. And I hope, or I feel like our school is one of those schools, but it's funny how though you can walk into a different school and you can totally feel a different way.
Mm-hmm. Chris, I want to piggyback on what you said, because I really think this standard is extremely important for administrators. You really have to understand the culture of a school, and it said in the reading that not only understand it but act on it. Mm-hmm. And I think an administrator would have to be prepared to even reculture the school if necessary. You were talking about those negative images and impressions. One thing that my school has gone through is that we have had some low performing schools in some areas, and it's simply because we have a large LEP population who have language barriers. But when the public looks at those scores, our report card, that doesn't always reflect that. So we may look like we're a low-performing school, when in essence, we have very, very good teachers, but we have some challenges that we have to overcome and find out creative ways. So that image of the school, even for the students, even the image that the students have of their own school is important. And a principal has to manage that, how they feel about their school. So I think setting a culture that's very positive, where you feel good about your school, where it's professional, it is positive, is a task for an administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Cynthia, because that's what really stood out to me in this one. Just the idea that, eventually we're all going to be new principals, and we may have to go in and reculture the school to make sure that it aligns with our goals and the improvement of the student learning there, and just making sure that, we're impacting it in a positive way. And that's not always going to be a easy challenge, because, you're going to have people who are, opposed to change, or and I think we've touched on this already today a little bit, but just, change is hard. And so just making sure that it's a positive thing for everyone is going to be important. And we're going to really have to keep that in the back of our minds, because our views on how a school should be run is one thing, but then just making sure that we're able to change what needs to be changed, but keep what works well as well.
And one other thing I want to point out, in that next to the last bullet point, it talks about building a can-do attitude. Mm-hmm. I think it's very easy for an environment to get negative. And I've seen it. I've taught at 2 different schools. Teachers start complaining. They're negative. They don't like this. They don't like that. And I personally don't like a lot of negativity.
I don't either.
And I think it's like a cancer that really infects the school morale. And to manage that, I think it does take a very good leader. Yes, we can. We know we have challenges. Our administrator did a good job at it. We know we have low-performing students. We have a large LEP population, but we can do it. And we administrators have to manage that.
Yes. Well, and we're doing a book talk on The Leader in Me right now. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all. But it's basically just taking the 7 principles of, effective leaders and applying it in the school setting. And so we're doing this book talk, and everything comes back to not only having a can-do attitude from the, teacher and the staff standpoint, but also like finding the talents in students. Yeah. So we were talking about, Cynthia, you were talking about how your school, the test scores don't always reflect necessarily a positive light, I guess. But kids aren't just a number. They all have a talent that maybe they're really good at basketball, or maybe they're really good at encouraging others because they have a kind heart and they're able to pick up on other people who are struggling with something that, even teachers can't figure that out. So it's important to recognize that all students have a talent, and it may not always be academic.
Right.
That's right.
That's right.
Right, so we'll move into our fourth standard, human resource leadership. And we might be running a little bit behind on time, but so the human resource leadership, when I think of human resource, and part of that, those bullets was the hiring process, making sure you've got good people in your building. When I have a little bit of a business experience. I used to own a business, and the number one thing in our business was our people. We were hiring, we were going to hire the best, and that is your main focus. It's your people. If your people aren't happy, and if your people aren't the best, you're not going to get the best results out of them.
Right.
So to have that to have those people is your first step, and then after you get them, you've got to figure out how to keep them. You've got to provide them with the resources that they need to do their job. And one of those bullets was about staff development. Ensuring that your teachers have that staff development that they need, or even the extra staff that are in your school, just so everybody's on the same page and everybody knows exactly what you're trying to accomplish. And then it talked about, using that NC Teacher Working Conditions Survey. We're going to have a school improvement team meeting in a couple weeks, and that's what we're going to be talking about during that meeting. And, how to make things better for our teachers, and what our teachers are feeling, and, how they feel about coming to work every day. And then another thing that stood out to me also was using, or really knowing your staff and having a systematic placement, process in your head. Where's the best place for this person? Because as when a new principal comes in, sometimes in our building, we've seen that people get moved around. And, it's just, and some of those placements have been wonderful. Somebody just didn't know that, like, we lost one of our kindergarten teachers to fourth grade this year. And it was just a huge change for that teacher. But she is the happiest that she's been in a long time. And our principal was able to see that she could do that would be a really good fit for her. And so it's been wonderful. And I think that just comes back to, knowing your people, knowing their strengths, and seeing what they are able to accomplish, even if they don't see it in themselves.
And I think that's a good point. What you said is like seeing what they could do, even if they don't see it in themselves. Because sometimes people just need that little extra push to a new role. Because again, we also know, I've said it already, change is hard. And when you've taught a grade level for so long, it's really hard to move. Now, myself personally, this is my 7th year teaching, and I've taught 4th and 5th grade, 1st grade, kindergarten, and 3rd. That's a lot.
I think that's wonderful, though. That gives you such a good experience.
I mean, it really does at the elementary level, and especially because I've even taught the 2 outlying grades really in the elementary, because if you think about it, kindergarten is kind of its own thing, and then 3rd grade has a lot of the legislative mandates and regulations that we really have to abide by. And so just making sure that you have that positive attitude is super important. We were talking about that just a little bit ago, and having, people who are negative versus positive. I try to be a very positive person, and so that's one of my goals as well.
And I think one of the bullet points I want to highlight, a lot has been said, you all brought up, the key points, but to evaluate teachers in a fair and equitable manner. I know that there was kind of some disappointment with some of the teachers I have worked with over the years, because some felt like their evaluation was not fair. And what I saw was different administrators saw that tool differently. And so I think it's be very important as an administrator to make sure, number one, you understand that evaluation tool and how to use it, and make sure that you're fair to your teachers. And I think that, again, teachers have to feel good about what they do. and how we evaluate them will play into that retention and that morale and so forth. One thing I would say, one of my first principals, she was an assistant principal. She was awesome. When she evaluated me, she always gave me wonderful tips. It was like a coaching session. And I mean, she just loaded me down with so many practices and ways and how to do things. And it spilled over into my high school years. This was when I was in middle school. And now I'm pretty much accomplished on all of my standards. But it was that foundation that she laid that, hey, try this, try that. And it was always coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I think that's super. That was,
try this. You know, like for them to say, don't be afraid to try this. You know, try something new.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one that really stood out to me as well, Cynthia, because I have worked for a principal who told me that everything that I was doing was wrong, that I needed to do, you know, go and work with these people and try to do this better, and go and work with these people and try to do this better. And then when I changed schools, my principal is like, you did what? Like, they were saying what? Like, she just didn't understand why all of that was going on. And so just making sure that you are aware of the perception that you're giving others, because that was something that was really hard. And Kristen, back to what you were saying about the school in your district where people were constantly fleeing, that school that I taught at before the school I'm at currently was that school that people are constantly fleeing from because it was an administrative issue. It was just a really tough place to work.
Right.
You know, and I want to say, Dr. Neal said in one of the videos, it was early on, that, you know, teachers should leave away feeling empowered, even if you have to, you know, point out some areas that need improvement or areas that they're not fully up to par. They still should walk away feeling empowered. And it's a way to do that. You know, it's a way to give constructive criticism, and we're doing it with each other. And so it's a way to do it that you don't rip people apart. You let them know you still are good. We're just going to grow you in this area, but I still value you. And that's so important. I personally have a conviction. Don't rip people apart.
That's right.
Empower them.
Yes.
Agree 100%.
I do too. I've got goosebumps over here, Cynthia. That is right. You are just speaking to my soul. Our fifth one, managerial leadership. So, you know, this is something that I'm interested in learning about as we go through this process, about budgets and how to balance budgets and you know, the managing part of it. And, you know, and managing the school and creating schedules. And, you know, as a principal, we're going to be in charge of a lot. There's just a lot that goes into it.
And I think these are a lot of things, the things you're mentioning, Kristen, are the things that we don't really see a part of necessarily in the teacher role. And so I too am also very interested in getting my hands into this and trying to like figure it all out.
Yes.
And, you know, I want to remind you when they talked about, you know, the purpose of the standards, is that you don't have to be able to master everything. You know, you just need to have a team that there's complementary skills. When I was in the middle school, I saw this played out very skillfully. I had one administrator that was the more detailed one, crunch numbers, you know, document. The other one was more personal, relate to the students, discipline. They balanced each other very, very well. So I think while we are achieving to strive for excellence, we don't have to be on, you know, excellent in everything, but just know what those deficiencies are and make sure that those areas are covered.
I think that's a great point.
I do too, Cynthia.
And, you know, and that just comes with self-awareness, you know, and knowing yourself and knowing what you're good at and what you need a little bit more help in. Yes. And okay, we've got 10 minutes left. So I'm going to move us into our sixth standard, external development leadership. You know, getting out there with your stakeholders and your community and having them be a part of the decision-making process. Like on our school improvement team, we have a parent representative, of course, but it's nice to see her views on things, because some of those things, you get in that teacher mindset and you don't think about things that they might think about in the problem solving process.
This is a challenge for high school. We just talked about this past week in my SIG meeting. Parents tend to be more supportive in elementary and middle, and for some reason at high school they just drop off.
Yeah.
And we just talked about this. I don't know if parents feel like they're outgrown. I don't need to be there as much, but parent involvement goes down the older they get. And so we have really, really struggled to get the parent involvement. And this year we have done an initiative where we make 3 parent contacts a week, and they have to be good contacts, something positive, and just instead of calling a parent because their grades are failing or whatever, we'll reach out and tell them what the students are doing good.
I like that.
Yeah, and so it has worked really well. And then getting support for community volunteers to come in and help with our struggling students by way of mentorship. Again, in high school, you see a lot of different things in high school. So we have to make sure that they don't drop out. So we look at our at-risk students and we get the mentors to make sure that they stay in school. So our strategies are a little bit different, but we do really, really need those external support systems at the high school level.
Yeah.
Our Title I team has a big influence on our parent involvement. They set aside so much money for each grade level to have at least 2 parent involvement activities a year, which is really great. Like yesterday, we had our pumpkin carving event for our kindergartners, and our Title I team came and they did a little presentation about segmenting words or cutting apart words, since we were cutting apart pumpkins. And so we had so many parents come. I mean, our room was full, and and then they got to do a fun activity, and then they came back later that night. We lined up all their pumpkins and they came and saw them all lit up. And I mean, we had so many parents come, and we were able to put tools in their hands, like some phoneme segmentation games, books, send them home with them. And so hopefully we'll be able to see some, improvement from just doing some things at home with these students. But and then Cynthia, our kindergarten students actually have high school pals, and the high schoolers will make trips, and it's actually our FFA team from the high school, but they'll come to our kindergarten students and they'll teach them about agriculture and about animals. And so we have like a whole half a semester where every Friday our Crest Pals are coming. Oh my goodness, our kids love it, and the high school kids love it too. And and our agriculture teachers at the high school, they have like really high expectations and high standards about students who are able to be in that program and able to be a Crest Pal. And I think it really it's just a community involvement together.
Yeah, those are some really great ideas, Kristen. I like how your Title I splits up parent involvement based on grade level, because that really encourages every grade level. I guess it's probably a requirement with the money there. They are required to do that per grade level. I like that. We do more whole school activities. So, and we do like ESL parent breakfast, and we try to do it at different times of the day, not just after school. Sometimes it's early in the morning, to try to hit all of those parents when a time that fits them. And then I like your high school involvement, because we're very conveniently located, like the high school and our school actually share the same exiting red light. So they literally are right across the street. So that would be something neat to share with my school as well.
I'll move us on into the 7th one, micro-political leadership. I feel like I talked a lot during that last one.
I kind of feel like we've talked about micro-political leadership a lot when we're talking about like our school improvement team, and we're talking about making sure that all stakeholders are being heard. I know at my school we have like I forget what it's actually called, but it's only made up of parents and the lead Title I teacher, the administrator, I think our social worker and our guidance counselor. But there's a parent representative from every grade level, even, and they come together. And then just making sure that you're not micromanaging staff. And it's something that really pointed out to me, and I know it's different at the high school level, Cynthia, but maintains high visibility throughout the school. And I think, going in and out of those classrooms is important. Making sure you're in the hallways, maybe even at transition times for high school. And just trying to make sure that you're always visible. And then that open communication was those are the last 2 bullet points that really stood out to me. And like that vertical communication between grade levels, but also, I guess it'd be horizontal through grade levels and vertical through all the different grade levels. Making sure you're talking to one another and everybody's aware of what's going on at each grade level.
Right. And I think, I love the piece about utilizing your diversity. I think an administrator that does that effectively really can take a lot of responsibility off of him or herself when you know what your staff can do, what their strengths are, and utilize that. I mean, 3 years ago, my principal asked me to be the United Way manager. And when he did, I said, he must have asked me that because I have corporate background. And my background is banking. And we had never made the goal until I took it on, and we made it every year. And it was simply because I had that banking background. And I think, when you know your staff, use those strengths that you have, utilize that diversity. And one of the things that it said that I thought was interesting was encouraging conflict. And when you look down at the practices, it talks about encouraging people to express opinions contrary to those in authority. And I found that very interesting because some people are not comfortable doing that. But I think if you are open to ideas that's different from your own, that makes you a confident leader because that's how you get good ideas. I think it's dangerous to have an environment where everybody agrees with you.
Yes.
You need somebody that doesn't always agree with everything.
Right. Plays that devil.
Challenge you to think differently. And even if you are a leader, it is okay to say, I don't agree with you. I mean, we look at this.
That's right.
So I think as an administrator, we can't go in as a know-it-all.
That's right. And we have less than a minute for our last one, the academic achievement leadership. And, I think all of these other standards kind of come down to this or influence this one standard, and your academic success of your students. And, and it talked about measurable growth and meeting expected growth or do not or exceeds. And, I think all these other standards really play a role into that last one.
I agree with you, Kristen, because if you don't have, and we've talked a lot about this positive culture, relying on other people because we can't get it all done. One person can't get it all done. But that academic achievement comes from that empowerment and from that trust that you build among your staff. And I think, if you're in that positive environment, your staff is going to perform better, which in turn is going to show that your students perform better, and it's going to help that academic achievement.
And I think this is why we're in the job to begin with. This is the ultimate goal, that we grow academically, our students. It's all about student growth. And I think that's the focus.
Yes, and that's student learning. Well, ladies, does anybody have any closing comments or anything else that they'd like to add?
Great discussion. Yeah. Good job. You did a good job.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, for setting this one up. And thank you, Cynthia, for our previous.
I'll send out the video to you.
Okay.
And the link to you. All right. Well, thank you, ladies.